afternoon. My name is Tom Gary. I'm the president of the Academic Senate here at Santa Barbara City College. And on behalf of the Senate and all of the college staff and faculty, I'd like to welcome you to this, our 9th annual faculty lecture. For the uninitiated, this is a rather stellar event on our college calendar, because today is a day when we honor one of our own, a colleague who's been selected by his peers for his dedicated service as a teacher, his unselfish and strenuous dedication to the life of the college and the good of the college. True to the very highest ideals of teaching, we honor this colleague by giving him more work to do. We ask him to prepare and come before us and deliver a lecture. The balm on, or salve on that burden, however, is that we grant this colleague the right to do something that all of us who are teachers yearn to do, and that is to speak before a willing and interested and diverse group of people on a subject that, for a change, we choose. Dr. George Edward Frakes has been a professor of history and geography at Santa Barbara City College since 1962. Educated at Stanford University and the University of California, Santa Barbara, has taught up and down the state of California and in such far-flung places as Honolulu. George, I'm not sure why you left there. But he's taught at institutions such as Stanford University, University of Southern California, he's taught at University Extension, and of course, since 1962 here. He's also served as an officer in the United States Air Force, and I discovered an interesting bit of trivia, and I'm not sure if this is talking about George or not, but there is a reference in one of MacArthur's biographies to a Bowser Frakes, who had a reputation for smashing up 98 aircraft. Origin of that is somewhat elusive. Professor Frakes has distinguished himself as a scholar and a writer, having published a number of works on American history, as a campus leader, having served as department chair, division chair, faculty representative, the president of 2 faculty associations, as a community leader by his service with civic, charitable, and political organizations, as well as professional societies related to his discipline of history and geography. Most of all, however, he's distinguished himself in one of the most important and selfless of all endeavors, that of teaching, sharing his knowledge, his insight, and himself with thousands of students, and leaving them with the imprimatur of his vision. George and his wife, Catherine, is also a teacher, have resided in Santa Barbara for nearly 30 years, where they have, and undoubtedly in their copious free time, raised 3 children, James, Laura, and Robert. Catherine, Kay, and Robert join us today to hear George's speech, which in this year of the bicentennial of our Constitution, Professor Frakes has chosen to address the issue of historic celebrations. Since our gathering is to celebrate Dr. Frakes' service and accomplishment as a history professor here at SBCC, it seems a particularly apt choice. Following the address, we hope that you will all join us for a reception out on the front patio and take the opportunity to meet Dr. Frakes if you've not met him before, and to meet other members of the college staff. Now that I've sufficiently embarrassed him, I'd like to take this opportunity and certainly the pleasure of introducing to you my colleague, Professor George Frakes.
I would like to begin the 9th faculty lecture by expressing my appreciation to the members of the faculty who nominated and selected me for this honor. This forum is an opportunity for me to express my thanks for being a part of the faculty at Santa Barbara City College for 25 years. In this quarter century, I've had the pleasure of associating with some of California's finest professors, many of whom are close friends as well as colleagues. The students are another joy. I have observed them grow in wisdom as well as in knowledge in their years here, and then have had the chance to watch those who graduate make their mark in universities, business, and the professions. Finally, I would like to thank my wife, Catherine Davies Frakes, and children, James, Laura, and Robert for their love, encouragement, and support, and hearing the speech a couple of times besides, which have helped to make my teaching career a fulfilling one. Recent America has experienced a boom period in the public's interest in popular history. Well-publicized events, such as the centennials of the Statue of Liberty, the National Geographic magazine, and of Hollywood, home of the film industry, focused national attention upon landmark events of our past. The recently lamented 58th anniversary of the 1929 stock market crash was noted with particular interest and substantial pain when a 1987 crash brought grim reminders of our past linkages with the present. Closer to home, a similar historical celebration commemorated the bicentennial of the Santa Barbara mission last year. Next year, two of many celebrations pending, which will add to the array of historical events, are the 20th anniversary of the end of the Beatles rock group and the 80th anniversary of the founding of Santa Barbara Junior College. Do these historical celebrations, among the thousands taking place in the United States, suggest a change in the national mood? Is this a movement away from a concentration upon the here and now to a concerned, reflective view of the past in order to gain a sense of direction or redirection in the 1980s? Or is this set of historical celebrations and commemorative events simply a case of nostalgia for a nervous people looking backward to seemingly happier and less complicated days in order to forget the present? Is this desire to glorify the men and women whose achievement seems to grow larger with the passage of time a reaction to the public perception that the leaders of today seem to struggle unsuccessfully with contemporary problems? Indeed, other reasons may explain the surge of historic celebrations that might be suggested: a desire to rekindle civic pride and patriotism, the opportunity to instruct the present and coming generations concerning values and attitudes, the possibilities of commercial gain, scholarly and journalistic recognition and fame, or an opportunity for escapism for the present, to mention only a few reasons. Notwithstanding the causes or the effects that others have perceived, I would like to comment how bicentennial and other celebrations can act as beacons to eliminate some paths from our past to possible roads to a successful civic future. In the process, I hope to comment upon the opportunities such widely heralded events present to educators, particularly in my field of history. My belief in historical commemorations as an opportunity to expand the public's knowledge of the past is not widely shared by many in my academic discipline. Some in my profession criticize historical celebrations as crass, shallow events that popularize and trivialize important milestones. I am not among them. My support for bicentennials and other historical commemorations is my belief that these events stimulate, however briefly, an interest as well as some media analysis which uplifts and excites the public to reconsider crucial events of our past and present. Between such popular celebrations, the press of daily events, the need to work for income, and the search for pleasure tend to relegate crucial but abstract ideas or institutions to the outer reaches of the public's mind and memory. One cynic, commemorating on the public's traditional absence of abstract thought, stated, quote, "Most people would rather and sooner die than think. In fact, they do so," end quote. I should attribute this quotation to Lord Russell in order to be considered another Joseph Biden. The absence of knowledge is all too clear to me as I go daily into the trenches of academic instruction to teach bright but frequently uninformed students in my survey courses. I believe any external help that I can obtain from the media and others to help in my quest to improve their knowledge and wisdom is welcome and really needed in this media age. My own anecdotal impression of the crying need for more information and understanding concerning our basic institutions and improved civic virtue has been confirmed by recent best-selling works by Alan Bloom and Dr. E.D. Hirsch. I would like to share some of the startling revelations that have made national and international headlines, which social science professors know all too well here on this campus and across the nation. Some painful yet comedic examples of the absence of such basic knowledge was recently shared by my colleague, Dr. John Kay. He reports that some of his students thought that Teapot Dome was a sports stadium in Boston. Another student believed that the distinguished Harvard professor and United States Senator Henry Cabot Lodge was a mountain ski resort. Dr. Diane Ravitch and Dr. E.D. Hirsch have documented in their book, Cultural Literacy, that a large representative sample of high school seniors do not know the following. Nearly 70% cannot place the Civil War in the proper half century. Almost 40% do not know when the Constitution was written, and almost 33% believe that Christopher Columbus discovered the New World in 1750. Furthermore, this study by the National Endowment for the Humanities uncovers equally devastating gaps of knowledge concerning history of Europe and literature. This well-publicized study suggests that a core of cultural literacy is needed for the present and future generations, and that substantial changes are needed to accomplish this monumental task. Such problems are not limited to the humanities. A recent series of articles in the Los Angeles Times newspaper regarding the present status of geography indicated large gaps in student knowledge. One of the surveys reported that nearly one-half the students in Dallas, Texas public high schools did not know the location of Mexico. A recent poll in a national weekly news magazine stated that 55% of the public supported the Reagan foreign policy in Central America, but only 10% of those polled knew where Central America was located. With such educational problems, what should be done about them? Another well-known critic of the general state of knowledge in the humanities, philosophy, and history is Dr. Alan Bloom of the University of Chicago. In his controversial, internationally best-selling work, The Closing of the American Mind, Professor Bloom criticizes the state of education in a democratic society ruled by public opinion. Bloom believes that the absence of the knowledge of philosophical principles and history makes the attainment of civic virtue and the quote-unquote general good impossible. Parenthetically, the term general good is a principle of government originally conceived by the ancient Greek philosophers and later redefined by Enlightenment thinkers. The heart of this philosophical belief is that knowledge and virtue of the citizenry are necessary for a successful Republican form of government. Dr. Bloom admonishes colleges and universities to return to a traditional, rigorous, liberal educational curriculum as a part of a wider range of criticism. For many who have completed their education or whose interests are in commercial and vocational fields, such cries for a return to a higher standard of curriculum and return to traditional academic study have little meaning or relevance. Often their only curriculum of liberal arts and civic education will be found in the press and the offerings of the visual media. It is for this vast population that public bicentennials and other commemorative events have real meaning and purpose. A brief examination of two bicentennials will provide background for my subsequent remarks. The first of these events is the 200th anniversary of the Santa Barbara Mission, which was founded in 1786. Until reconstruction of the Royal Presidio, the mission is our only constant link with Santa Barbara's Hispanic past. The mission and Presidio represent the two foundations of this city, religious and secular. The mission, founded by Padre Fermín Lassueng, started as a rude enramada, or shelter of brush and stone. With the practical and spiritual wisdom based upon nearly 250 years of experience in Mexico, the Padres, with the assistance of a handful of soldiers, selected a near-perfect location for their church, recruited Native American Indians, and convinced, or at least persuaded, the local Chumash to build a still-functioning church, water system, and started the basis for modern agriculture in this area. The enduring triumph of the work is the mission itself, persisting through earthquakes, Indian revolt, the change from Spanish to Mexican, and finally to American governments. This handsome ecclesiastical building personifies the spirit of the community. Santa Barbara's mission's Mediterranean architecture, with its roots drawn from the soil of Italy, Spain, and Mexico, helps to set the example for the stucco and red tile that gives this city its pleasing architectural character. the generosity and hospitality of its pastors help to maintain some of the finer aspects of Hispanic culture in this community. These qualities and the enduring religious and social good works of the priest have not gone unnoticed in the community, which twice rallied around the mission in time of crisis. The first of these crises happened in the early 1830s, when a well-meaning Mexican government secularized the mission chain throughout California. The return of the church lands to the Native Americans and Californios meant that the missions closed and the Chumash were left to their own resources. The citizenry of Santa Barbara, under the leadership of Don Nicolas Den, an Irish rancher, raised money and purchased the church and its immediate surrounding real property to keep the church alive. Thus, Santa Barbara Mission is the only one in the mission system that has never extinguished its altar light. Nearly 90 years later, in 1925, the city and church were struck by a devastating earthquake, which caused severe damage to the structure. Once again, leading Santa Barbara residents rallied to the support of rebuilding of this venerable institution. What makes the Santa Barbara Mission Church's bicentennial noteworthy? The planning of the 2-year program has been excellent. Tasteful and well-delivered events, including a series of public lectures by academic and religious authorities, have expanded the public and academic knowledge of the role of the mission and missionaries in the history of California and Santa Barbara. Tours of the church have offered opportunities for the public to see the largely unknown part of the beautiful mission garden to those with the initiative to learn. The splendid Franciscan library in the mission was expanded and made available to researchers, and a variety of publications was released. Even more important to the success of the mission's bicentennial is the nature of the institution and what it has offered the community in its 200 years of a foundation of faith, a set of moral principles, a link to a distant and colorful past, its ongoing program of social service to the community, its role as a center of scholarship and historic research, and its hospitality to the community of non-Roman Catholics. Other well-managed institutions have come and gone in the 2 centuries, but the mission endures and flourishes. Perhaps its bicentennial symbolism reflects the need for accomplishment and civic responsibility as a prerequisite for a successful historical commemoration. A second and much better known bicentennial, 1787 to 1987, whose fame spans the nation and globe, is that of the United States Constitution. The purpose of this national effort is to rededicate the citizenry to the principles of the Constitution. The commission in charge of the 2-year program has a goal of expanding the knowledge about the period of its birth, the events that shaped it, and the applications of the Constitution to more recent life. Since the U.S. Constitution is the foundation of our federal government and national history, the knowledge of the document and the history surrounding it is assumed to be the bedrock of social studies education in the nation. But, as most professors of history and American government know all too well, the reality of most students and the public's understanding of the constitutional principles is quite limited. History teacher that I am, I cannot bypass the opportunity to refresh this captive audience's knowledge. The Constitutional Convention being commemorated this year was convened in Philadelphia in May 1787. Prior to the convention, the 13 states that constitute the United States had operated with modest success in the nearly 4 years that had passed since the end of the Revolutionary War. The young nation was operating under its first constitution, the Articles of Confederation, which was notable for its distrust of central authority, its weak structure, and the absence of support among the economic, agricultural, and financial leaders of the nation. After 2 preliminary meetings, a group of well-educated, wealthy, and respected leaders convinced the Congress to call a convention to amend the Articles of Confederation. Many of the same spokesmen were among the 55 who attended the convention and have been subsequently called the Founding Fathers of the nation. All states were represented except Rhode Island. At Independence Hall in Philadelphia, the delegates struggled with broad issues of philosophy of government and civic responsibilities. They also faced the challenge of constructing a government that could solve a large number of pressing contemporary problems. The immediate issues were important matters of economic inflation, social discontent among war veterans and along the frontier, low international prestige, and an even lower international credit rating. This multitude of problems combining with deep divisions between the states, made for a long and difficult agenda of problems to be resolved. Under the guidance of Convention President George Washington and elder statesman Benjamin Franklin, the delegates divided their time between plenary sessions and committees assigned to make recommendations as to the specific structure of the government and the language of the document. The average age of the delegates was nearly 31, and those in attendance were notable for their wide range of experiences, considerable wealth, and unusually high standard of education. They shared the 18th century Enlightenment philosophical outlook of a mechanistic, that is, clockwork or clock-like universe, and worked to build a government that could fit within these principles. The delegates' mindset, shaped by their recent Revolutionary War military experience, combined with the turbulence and inflation of post-revolutionary America, gave them a general distrust of the common man and woman and of public opinion. Known as Federalists, they believed that human nature was to be distrusted and the general good could only be understood and achieved by an educated elite. The Constitution they wrote reflected all these values. It is, of course, the result of many compromises among the delegates. The documents celebrated checks and balance system, separation of powers, and tripartite form all reflect the delegates' practical experience and knowledge of ancient and modern history and government. The delegates were particularly influenced by the works of Polybius and Charles Montesquieu, a French Enlightenment scholar. After months of hot, non-air-conditioned work, the delegates signed the United States Constitution on September 17, 1787. Delaware was the first state to ratify in December, and the Constitution became the, quote, supreme law of the land, end quote, when New Hampshire, the ninth state, ratified it on June 21, 1788. Rhode Island, ever the laggard, was the last of the original states to approve on May 29, 1790, 23 months after the Constitution officially went into effect. Of the 39 delegates who signed the document in Philadelphia, the majority shared the guarded optimism of Benjamin Franklin, who stated prior to signing, I'm afraid this is a long quote, but hang in, quote, I confess that I do not entirely approve of this Constitution at present, but having lived long, I've experienced many instances of being obliged by better information or fuller consideration to change opinions, even on important subjects which I once thought right but found to be otherwise. I doubt whether any other convention we can obtain may be able to make a better Constitution, for when you assemble a number of men to have the advantage of their joint wisdom, you inevitably assemble with those men all their prejudices, their passions, their errors of opinion, their local interest, and their selfish views. From such an assembly can a perfect production be expected? It therefore astonishes me, sir, to find this system approaching so near to perfection as it does. And I think it will astonish our enemies who are waiting with confidence to hear that our counsels are confounded, like those of the builder of Babel, and that our states are on the point of separation, only to meet hereafter for the purpose of cutting one another's throats. Thus, I consent, sir, to this Constitution, end quote. Franklin's modest enthusiasm is shared by those elected to high office, because in the first session of Congress, only 1/3 of the representatives and senators appeared the first day of the congressional session. Indeed, it took a month to establish enough representatives for a quorum. Once the Constitution was put into effect by the new government, the first of many steps toward improving the Constitution took place. That was the ratification of the first 10 amendments, or Bill of Rights, in 1791. Following this landmark achievement, the subsequent implementation of the Constitution solved problems continued through a process of changing interpretation, constitutional amendment, and judicial review. I am aware of the valid criticisms of the document and the government it created. 1, overly mechanistic. 2, the inclusion of slavery. 3, the ill treatment of Native Americans and Japanese Americans. 4, the slow resolution of equality for women. And 5, the insensitivity to the problems of the poor. Yet if all these problems have not been resolved, the Constitution affords the opportunity for future solutions within the structure of the government created and nurtured by the men who wrote the documents. Thomas Jefferson, a non-participant and anti-federalist, called the Constitutional Convention, quote, an assembly of demagogues, end quote. That statement may tend to hyperbole, but the accomplishment of the men in Philadelphia has created an institution worthy of a bicentennial, as it has done much to improve civic virtue and create the general good. This relatively short document has enabled the nation to cope with such crises as a bloody civil war, 2 world wars, the resignation of a recent president, and an impeachment of an earlier one. All these problems, as well as the domestic upheaval during a contemporary unpopular war, attest to the problem-solving apparatus contained within our framework of government. A case study of a foreign policy application of the Constitution is taking place this week. It is the historic Arms Reduction Summit in Washington, D.C. This meeting between President Ronald W. Reagan and General Secretary Mikhail S. Gorbachev illustrate the differences in public policy formation between the American and Russian governmental system. The American treaty ratification procedure represents the United States principle as shaped by the Constitution, freedom of speech and the press, and the open debate and dialogue they inspire. Governmental officials of the United States consider the impact of public opinion as they act, and the principle of senatorial confirmation acts as a check and balance upon even the president's action. Such is the power of the supreme law of the land, whose positive values are reaffirmed in the bicentennial commemoration. 200 years after the establishment of the United States Constitution, former Chief Justice Warren E. Burger assumed the leadership of the Bicentennial Commission to commemorate the event. Mr. Burger's leadership has been capable and effective in his tenure on the Commission. His efforts have enabled the Constitution's anniversary to gain more time and national media attention than last year's highly commercial, flamboyant centenary remembrance of the Statue of Liberty. There is a wide spectrum of events associated with the Constitutional Bicentennial, ranging from elementary school puppet shows, local musical and dramatic pageants, nationally syndicated newspaper columns, articles, and editorials, public broadcast system and network television programs, and the culmination in Philadelphia this August. The cost for the program from various federal sources were nearly $55 million, with additional millions provided by other sources. The names of the 24-person Commission on the Bicentennial of the U.S. Constitution reads like a who's who of the American political, intellectual, and corporate establishment. It would seem, with its able leadership and financial support, the public's knowledge and understanding of the Constitution and its role in achieving good government and public policy would be greatly expanded. Was the vast scope and cost of this anniversary celebration of the supreme law of the land justified by its results? This is one of the crucial questions of this address. This inquiry is divided into 4 parts, which follows. They are: what audience was reached? How effective was the presentation of the information? What segments of the national population ignored all or most of the entire bicentennial effort? And, finally, has the 2-year celebration left an enduring foundation of understanding and scholarship that will lead to future civic betterment? I believe that the Constitutional Bicentennial has been largely successful in terms of the previously mentioned questions, but some criticisms can be made. The presentation of information was widely distributed by every possible communication source. It took a conscious effort to avoid the information presented at all levels of government, as well as by journalists and educators. Those persons who remained untouched by the Constitutional Bicentennial did so as a result of their illiteracy, apathy, lack of civic concern, or perhaps a cynical lack of trust in government. Such negative forces can prevent the accomplishments of the goal of any historical celebration, no matter how well designed or managed. The bicentennial was most effective in reaching children, young persons, the politically active, the literate, and the well-informed. These segments of society are perhaps the most significant because it is they who do most of the work for civic betterment. The Constitutional Bicentennial did stimulate wide-ranging debate within and without academia. Instead of the normal readers of scholarly journals, the discourse reported in popular journals reached a much larger audience than normal due to the opportunities presented by the media's interest. The stream of articles, books, and media programs concerned with constitutionally related subjects have influenced and will continue to shape political thought. On balance, the entire exercise, while not without some criticisms for certain aspects that were shallow, overly commercial, or trivial, has served a positive purpose. 2 historic celebrations of entirely different institutions, less than 200 years old, can provide insight into the emergence of California's sense of its historic past. They are anniversaries of Hollywood and of Santa Barbara City College. Even as our nation commemorated its centennial celebration in 1876, 100 years ago, a small community named Hollywood was founded and slowly developed a few miles northwest of the center of Los Angeles. Part of the California general real estate boom of the 1880s, Hollywood attracted sun and health seekers, land speculators, would-be millionaires, normal citizens, as well as many unusual persons who would have fine difficulty fitting in anyplace else. Such eager immigrants had not yet heard the classic one-liner, quote, "Perhaps there's no life after death, there's just Los Angeles," end quote. A few years later, Hollywood was next by the larger city of the Angels, and had it not been for the film industry, the name would have no more significance than Eagle Rock, El Monte, or Cerritos. Of course, what makes Hollywood different from any place else in California, or the nation, or the world, is the image of the motion picture capital, where outrageous dreams, talent, beauty, and wealth are clustered. The film industry first arrived in Southern California in search of good winter weather for filming, and a place where motion picture producers and directors could use moving picture cameras of dubious ownership, far from the lawsuits of film pioneering genius Thomas Alva Edison and his partners in New York. 80 years ago, in 1907, William Selig completed the first commercial film in Los Angeles, The Count of Monte Cristo. Soon an old barn and tavern at the corner of Sunset and Gower Street became the first Hollywood studio. The Law of the Range was the first of countless westerns made in Hollywood that were produced to make money for the mass market of a public anxious for adventure and romance. The leaders of the film industry that rapidly emerged after 1907 were men far different from the highly educated and dedicated priests and patriots who were responsible for the two previously mentioned bicentennials. The six most prominent of the early film magnates were self-made men, many immigrants from Europe. The men who created the motion picture industry possessed an immense drive, resourcefulness, and an almost maniacal capacity for work. The results were rags to riches wealth for some, and poverty for others. Nearly 20 years after the first Hollywood film, sound was added to moving pictures to further revolutionize and popularize this industry. What was created was an instrument with endless potential for achieving the general good. A medium that could make the fabled storytelling abilities of the past pale in comparison. Often the studios would settle for far less lofty goals if the profit margins were great enough. At its peak of popularity in the 1940s, the motion picture industry employed nearly 40,000 persons and brought talented individuals from around the world. The result of this boom were varied. Quote, "In the field of manners, morals, social taste, and business ethics, the Hollywood legacy is a mixture of good and bad, taste and tastelessness, showmanship and wisdom," end quote, to cite California historian Robert Glass Cleveland. From this peak in the mid-1940s to its rise again in the 1980s, Hollywood suffered a generation of decline. Then the rise of the video cassette recorder, combined with talented new executives, has rejuvenated Hollywood profits into a new silver age of the film industry. Scattered attempts to commemorate this Hollywood centennial have gone largely unheralded. Why is this the case? I believe the indifference to the past is a product of the nature of the ephemeral profit orientation of the film industry and its leadership. Not to belittle the important work of the American Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the American Film Institute, the Hollywood Museum, and other serious film-related organizations, there is little deep interest in Hollywood's past except among film buffs. To most Americans, Hollywood evokes no image of significance. Therefore, any attempt to make its centennial meaningful will have little more importance than the placing of another star on the sidewalk of stars on Hollywood Boulevard. Even as the film industry was emerging in Hollywood, some importance to this community took place. It was the founding of Santa Barbara Junior College, the parent and progenitor of Santa Barbara City College. Unlike the other three celebrations mentioned in this address, this event is likely to receive little funding or fanfare, so I thought this an opportunity to review some of the key events of this vital institution and make a plea for a systematic effort to record our past. Santa Barbara Junior College was the second such institution founded in the state and nation. It was located at Victoria and Anacapa Street and terminated its operations shortly before World War I. Former students of the early period, such as nationally acclaimed architect Luta Maria Riggs and civic leader and star attorney, recently passed away, Julian Gu, studied, learned their lessons well, and later made their positive mark on this city. 30 years passed, and shortly after the end of World War II, the need for college educational opportunities for GIs returning to Santa Barbara was greater than the capacity of the local campus of the University of California, then located on the Riviera. University of California Santa Barbara College, as it was then known, was a splendid liberal arts college with vocational training on the Mesa campus, much later the home of City College. A few years later, a third part of the University of California Santa Barbara College would be added near the airport in Goleta. With both the Mesa and Riviera campus units bursting with students, the Santa Barbara High School District decided to help the local veterans by reopening the junior college on Santa Barbara Street. Dr. William Kircher was appointed principal of the college. Thanks to the courtesy of Professor Henry Baggish, one of the faculty members from the Kircher years, the 1951 catalog reveals a limited number of courses, and a visual inspection of the campus shows the limitation imposed by the buildings and space for the emerging college and its young faculty. The college grew from a few students to over 1,000 in 1961. Along the way, Dr. Leonard Bowman was appointed college director in 1952 to replace the first administrator. And here is a long list, but these people are important and they deserve their time. Such distinguished pioneer faculty as Robert Profond, Frank Fowler, Robert Kelly, Albert Henry Bud Revis, John O'Day, Julia Bramlage, Winifred Lancaster, Marie Lantain, Maxine Wattell, Marie Gressel, Max Whitaker, Kenneth Schober, Charles Courtney, Ray Loyne, the late Timothy Fettler, Robert Kassir, Stanley C. Sophus, and Henry Baggish, and many others helped to provide outstanding undergraduate instruction for the generation of students in the 1950s. Key events of the 50s included the move to the Riviera campus, which was vacated when UCSBC moved to Goleta, the establishment of the Santa Barbara Junior College, now City College Instructors Association, and the appointment of Dr. Joseph Kosan as director and later president of the college. The great difficulty of the 50s was the downturn in enrollments caused by the decline of birth rate of the 1930s, as well as the Korean War draft. In the 1960s, with the end of the Korean War and the emergence of World War II baby boom, the Riviera campus could no longer accommodate the growing number of local high school graduates. Under the leadership of Joseph Kosan, the college was moved to the present Mesa site in 1961. By this time, the work of the faculty and Dr. Kosan had started to achieve positive community recognition and favorable regard. Particularly noteworthy in this formative period was the outstanding adult education division under the leadership of Dean Selmer, better known as Sam Wake, and his college, which had developed nationwide acclaim. Equally important was the high standard set by instructors and the high level of academic performance of students who transferred from Santa Barbara Junior College to four-year institutions. This discussion of Santa Barbara City College's history would not be complete without a final comment about Joseph Kosan. Kosan left Santa Barbara to accept the chancellorship of the St. Louis College system and later to become a professor at the University of Michigan. In his tenure here as president, he managed the change from a small institution to one of 1,200 students, recruited excellent faculty who would be the foundation upon which the larger departments of today are built, did preliminary work for the separation of the college from the parent high school district, and approved the name change to City College. His accomplishments are still remembered fondly by senior faculty. After a brief caretaker period under Mr. Douglas White, Dr. Robert Rockwell, a local Harvard graduate, was selected as the college's next president. Within a year, he accomplished the emancipation of the college from the secondary district and became the first superintendent as well. The first trustee election which followed the establishment of the new district was a fortunate one. Since a highly intelligent, dedicated group of civic leaders was elected to give general direction and to set policies for the years to follow. That original group consisted of Catherine Alexander, James Garvin, Benjamin P.J. Wells, Dorothy Meigs, Sidney Frank, Wilbur Filippini, and Winifred Lancaster. A quarter of a century later, Dr. Catherine Alexander and Sidney Frank continued their service to the students, college, and community. Their dedication should also be noted during this commemoration. Following Dr. Rockwell were Lorenzo Dell'Arme, Dr. Giulio Bortolazzo, and Dr. Glenn Gooder. Giulio Bortolazzo's landmark accomplishment was leading a campaign that approved a bond issue, enabling the college to purchase the West Campus property and to build on the East Campus. The presidencies of the 1960s and 70s were marked by such issues as the ending of dress codes, the establishment of the Academic Senate, construction of several badly needed buildings, and the end of in loco parentis, that was the college's responsibilities as a parent, free speech rights, student political activism, minority identity issues, questions of academic and behavioral standards, and rapid student and faculty growth. To say the years from 63 to 77 were exciting and challenging is an understatement. Then, shortly after the election of Governor Edmund G. or Jerry Brown, Jr., came a decade of austerity caused by the passage of Proposition 13 and static enrollments that created an entirely different and difficult set of problems for Presidents David Mertes and Peter McDougall, the faculty, and the staff of City College. Few new faculty were added to the tenured professorate, and substantial changes took place as re-entry and minority students became an ever larger part of the student body. With major changes in the nature of community college under consideration in Sacramento, the chance of even greater modifications in the near future appears probable. Next year will mark the 80th anniversary of the founding of the college and the 42nd year of its renewed existence. The older cohort of post-World War II alumni have now reached an age when they are making a significant impact in the community and beyond. The contributions of more recent graduates shows great promise. As our college has now reached a period of some history, I would like to urge the establishment of an archive of written materials and an oral history program to systematically report our achievements and have a corpus of information upon which we can base our decisions so as to not repeat our mistakes. Until this comes to pass, I hope this sketch and anecdotal review will give us some insight into our recent past. Institutions should have their historical celebrations because the recording and recounting of their past puts color in the larger tapestry of state and national history. Such commemorations, bicentennial, centennial, or otherwise, can focus attention of a community, large or small, upon the enduring values, accomplishments, failures, and goals of a city, church, college, nation, or industry. Such inquiry will bring to many a sense of pride of accomplishment. But more significant for others is that these events will cause a renewed sense of direction and purpose for the years ahead. Furthermore, the impact of historic commemorations increases as the age of the institution lengthens. The better the planning of the anniversary celebration, the greater is the public awareness and appreciation of the event. More important than the quality of the celebration is the achievement of the institution commemorated. If managed honestly and thoughtfully, such events can provide the needed public insight that can lead to civic betterment and the general good. Thank you very much.